Hey guys, this is another video for Free Range Phoenix, a blog about narcissistic abuse recovery and codependency. I'm Chris, and today I want to begin to talk about my story and get this out there, hopefully to help me see clearer and help people understand what they're going through and feel like they're not alone. So the big problem relationship that I recently had, I met this girl in Reykjavik. I was there for a weekend by myself, and I came across these two American girls, and even from the moment that, in hindsight, even from the moment that I met this girl, she was garnering narcissistic supply. Her and her friend were surrounded by a group of older men, and one of them had his arm draped over her. And I thought at the time, and again I see this as typical codependent behavior now, but I said I have to rescue them. So even the moment I met her, she was soaking up the supply. Everybody else in the group was a little uncomfortable, except for the guy who was draped all over her. So anyway, that's how it began. I was in a relationship at the time, so nothing else happened for about 4 months, and then I decided I would go and visit some friends in New York, and you know, I had been thinking about meeting up with this girl. She seemed like what I wanted. We hadn't spoken much. She was beautiful. She was my type, and she was, you know, outgoing and extroverted and funny. And she seemed very social. She was American, which for me, you know, is another thing that I tend to be attracted to. So the purpose of the trip to New York was to catch up with an old friend of mine who had moved there. But all I could think about really was what was going to happen with this girl, because she'd agreed to come and meet me. And you know what? That first day, that Sunday that we spent together was a great day. It was fantastic. We spent all day laughing. You know, there wasn't too much investment at that point, so everything was fun, light, no problems. I came away from it though pretty enamored, and so then about a month later, after returning to the UK, I went to visit her in Philadelphia, which is where she'd been living nearby. And over the course of that weekend, it was a long weekend that I was there, some of the things that I now understand are narcissistic red flags were there. In the way that she would make jokes which I took to be sort of playing rough, which I wasn't really used to. Later she would justify it saying, oh, you know, she had these siblings and it was always sort of rough and tumble, and I thought, well, as an only child I didn't have experience of that kind of thing. So even though she was making these little digs, which, you know, I do believe from work I've done in kind of dating and relationships that women, not to generalize, but women can kind of test you to, you know, they want to see what you're made of and how stable you are and all that kind of stuff. But this, I think, was beyond that. This is stuff that I couldn't just roll with. It was like, you're so this or you're too that. And after a bit of it, I started saying, hey, you know, why are you saying this? It's rude. And she started telling me, you're too sensitive. Why are you too sensitive? You can't take a joke. And yeah, so it begins. But I was, you know, journaling back in those days, as you know, I have been for quite a long time. Looking back at what I wrote, I noticed that I thought, you know, I was really into her from the beginning. And in the events she had lined up, she did show me a great time. And it was kind of challenging to me because it brought me out of my shell in a way. But looking back, I can see that there was some stuff that was problematic even then. Like the purpose of me going to Philadelphia was to get to know her. And she arranged for, as soon as I got there, to meet some friends of hers. I had said I would rather if we just had a meal, the two of us, and started to get properly acquainted. But she said she wanted to meet up with her friends, and I agreed. And it was fine. You know, it was fine. Maybe I was being too nervous about it, too kind of clingy. But then a couple of days later, we were doing things, just the two of us, and she arranged to meet up with those same friends without telling me. And now I see that as problematic. Like, I think now in that situation, even if somebody thinks I'm being too, you know, possessive or boring or whatever, I think you need, in a relationship, to have the respect where you would have a conversation about it. At least you'd at least say, you know, how about us meeting up again with those guys? You liked them. We had, you know, a good time, all of that. And, you know, you'd give the person the chance. You wouldn't just arrange to meet them as if it's just coincidence, because then you've duped the other person, right? It's just like... and the funny thing is, that happened several times. That exact thing happened a few times in the coming months. And I had forgotten... It caused so much trouble in future that I had forgotten she did it, even in that first weekend where I went to stay with her. So, met up with other friends of hers, and again, I felt like it was fine, it went well. But another little, even in this very early stage, little narcissistic dig. She told me afterwards that her friends assumed I was gay. Two of them were gay, and a third was very kind of effeminate and camp. So I assumed he was. Later it seems, you know, he wasn't, but she told me that they thought I was gay. And I guess I wasn't surprised, because as somebody who's quite articulate and, you know, I'm not a lad at all. I've had people say similar things to me in the past, which I think not particularly insecure about. It's obviously not nice for somebody to try and make that dig to you as a guy, that you're gay when you're not. But the truth is, I don't think I've ever been particularly feminine. I just think certain types of people see non-laddishness and like articulate erudition as a feminine trait, which it isn't. So I've never been particularly insecure about it, but now I realize that her saying that is not great. It was that wasn't a test, that was, you know, a dig for some reason. She also later told me that one of her friends had told her, what you're doing with this guy, you can do better. Now, again, I think that I wasn't feeling too insecure at the time. But in telling this to friends of mine since then, they've said, well, what kind of person would tell you that? Even if a friend, excuse me, even if a friend didn't like a guy who you showed up with and, you know, you're seeing each other or whatever, you wouldn't tell that person, so-and-so, everybody liked you, but so-and-so thought you were too, you know, overweight or balding or ugly or something like this. But she told me. So I realize now that's not normal behavior. You know, these things show that lack of empathy that is the hallmark of narcissistic individuals, the lack of empathy. So I came away from that first visit with her feeling really good about it. And, you know, that was the codependent side of me as well. It wasn't just appreciating these great things about her, it was ignoring these red flags. And that, you know, even that first little while had some red flags. So hopefully some of you can relate to some of that behavior, and moving forward we can start to listen to our gut and recognize these things early on, and not just brush them under the rug, but question whether they are acceptable. Because that kind of stuff, hiding things from you, making digs of that kind, I think between men and women do usually test you even from the beginning, but this is above and beyond that. This is like more of a power play. So I hope this first video about the narrative that I've been through, about the stuff that I've been through itself, is helpful to you. If you find it useful, please like, comment, subscribe to the channel. I'm going to be working through the story with you over the coming weeks, and yep, I hope to see you next time. Thank you.